We live in an age of perpetual volatility. In the modern organizational landscape, we're surrounded by uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. For many leaders, this isn't just a sporadic obstacle. It has shifted from a minor hurdle to a chronic and debilitating crisis. If you feel like the traditional tools of management are failing you, you are certainly not alone. Research indicates that the secular toolkit for dealing with uncertainty as a leader is fundamentally flawed. We see the evidence in record levels of executive burnout, decision paralysis, and strategic failure. In this video, we'll explore why the old way of muscling through no longer works, and how a shift from ownership to stewardship can provide a practical framework for facing uncertainty. The statistical data from 2024 and 2025 underscore the severity of this leadership crisis. Leadership burnout rates have climbed to 56%, a significant increase that signals a systemic failure in our ability to cope with complexity and uncertainty. Even more shocking, 43% of companies reported losing at least half of their leadership teams in a single year. This massive turnover rate threatens the strategic continuity of major organizations. In high-stakes sectors like healthcare, where uncertainty involves life and death stakes, 74% of executives report extreme stress levels. This always-on crisis mode has blurred the boundaries between work and home, resulting in strained personal relationships and physical health issues. When we look at the psychology behind this, we find a concept called intolerance of uncertainty. This is the tendency of leaders to view the unknown not as a neutral challenge, but as a threatening, unfair, and unbearable condition. It triggers three dangerous behaviors. First is hypervigilance, where you obsessively scan the environment for threats. Second is inhibitory anxiety, a physiological trigger that leads to decision paralysis. Third is the frantic quest for certainty, driven by the irrational belief that if you gather enough data, uncertainty can be eliminated. Ironically, research shows that under high levels of stress, a leader's preference shifts so dramatically toward reducing tension that they may prefer a bad but certain outcome over a potentially good but uncertain one. The primary secular response to this anxiety is the attempt to control as much as possible. We use rigid planning, exhaustive forecasting, and standardized decision-making to create an illusion of control. While these strategies might provide a temporary psychological calming effect, they actually diminish an organization's ability to innovate or spot real risks. It creates a state of cognitive laziness in which leaders seek comfort in consensus and surround themselves with like-minded people who reinforce the status quo. This creates a dangerous echo chamber that filters out contrary views from the external environment, leaving the organization too slow to react. This environment also breeds knowledge hiding, where information is hoarded as a personal currency of survival. In times of uncertainty, employees may also engage in defensive behaviors by withholding critical information to make themselves indispensable. When leaders can't provide certainty, the unwritten contract of employment, the idea that hard work is exchanged for security, feels violated. This erodes trust and leads employees to view the organization as an enemy of their security rather than a partner. Knowledge hiding eventually stifles creativity, creates redundancy, and undermines the very foundation of teamwork. One of the consequences of mismanaged uncertainty is strategic drift. This happens when an organization's strategy gradually decouples from the reality of its environment. Because leaders fear the anxiety of the unknown, they prefer small, incremental changes rather than bold pivots. They double down on old ways of doing things, convinced that if they just execute the old strategy better, success will return. This leads to the competency trap, where an organization becomes so efficient at its current activities that it loses the ability to explore new ones. By the time the drift is acknowledged, the organization is often in a full-blown crisis requiring traumatic restructuring. The Bible offers a radical alternative to this cycle of attempted control and failure by reframing the leader's relationship to uncertainty. The biblical approach is to move from an ownership model to a stewardship model. In secular leadership, the leader carries 100% of the burden. If you believe you're the ultimate owner of the outcome, then uncertainty is an existential threat to your identity and worth. But Scripture teaches in Psalm 24, verse 1 that the earth is the Lord's and everything in it. As a steward, you are responsible for faithfulness to God in the process, but God is responsible for the outcome. This realization liberates the leader from the crushing weight of the unknown. You show up and do your best, and God controls the outcome. Colossians 3 verse 23 states it best, "Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord rather than for people." This isn't a call to be irrational or to ignore reality. Proverbs 22 verse 3 tells us that a prudent person foresees danger and takes precautions. This validates risk management, forecasting, and data analysis as acts of spiritual stewardship. However, biblical theology also acknowledges the limits of human control. James 4 verses 13 through 15 critiques the arrogance of secular planning that assumes a certainty humans can't possess. Instead, it suggests a posture of held loosely planning that remains open to divine redirection, summarized by the phrase, "if the Lord wills." To operationalize this, instead of just gathering data, we practice holy indifference, praying to reach a state of willingness to accept any outcome God desires, effectively surrendering the need for a specific result. We use sanctified logic, which analyzes facts using reason, but filters them through biblical principles like integrity, justice, and mercy. We seek counsel from other leaders who are Christ followers who can help us discern the moral and spiritual weight of a decision. We also need new liturgies or practices to address the physiological effects of uncertainty, such as burnout. This includes the liturgy of the empty chair, keeping a physical seat open in meetings to represent Christ's presence and to remind the team of the ultimate owner. It includes a strict Sabbath protocol, which is an act of resistance against the idol of our own indispensability. By resting for 24 hours, we declare that the world will keep spinning because God is holding it, not by our control, authority, or talent. Finally, we must embrace a theology of failure. Because a believer's identity is hidden with Christ, professional failure is not a final verdict on one's life. This security allows Christian leaders to take redemptive risks that secular leaders, fearing for their careers, simply cannot. We can reframe innovation by asking how our work culture can bless our team and how our products can humanize our customers. The reliance on human control, prediction, and self-preservation is generating a generation of burned-out leaders. The call to the Christian leader is not to seek a life of certainty, but a life of faithfulness. We can navigate the unknown with confidence, knowing that while we don't know the future, we know the one who holds it. Even when walking through the darkest valley, we fear no evil, for he is with us. In the final analysis, the presence of God is the only certainty a leader needs. Embrace the certainty that God provides in your life to navigate the uncertainty of your work. If you'd like to learn more about becoming a Christ follower leader, go to motivitymedia.com/why.
This has been a copyrighted production of Motivity Media. For more articles about leadership and biblical principles, go to motivitymedia.com.